Hello and welcome to Tuesdays from Morrissey, where we share insights from great thinkers. Today I'm excited to be joined by Knox Kronenberg. Knox is a fine art photographer based in Austin, Texas, focusing on capturing the essence of the old world meeting the new, as well as the unique beauty of Western life. Knox, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. When I first heard of you, you were described as this epic photographer guy who was also a former pro fly fisherman and a wilderness guide who could tell you about the indigenous people who lived in different areas based on the taste of the grass. How does somebody get a reputation like this?
I think there's some truth and definitely some outlandish call outs in that statement, but I love that that's a sentence used to describe me. Man, to be completely honest, the way that I can best describe it is my life has been a natural progression of passion. At a very, very early age, I fell in love with the outdoors. The outdoors kind of like being this big encompassing thing that meant, I loved hunting, I loved fishing, I loved surfing, I loved snowboarding. It was basically like anything that could keep me outside. It was like I'm all in. I was never the inside kid, and then that's just kind of evolved over time. When I was in high school, I was actually blessed enough to learn and compete and be a part of the U.S. youth fly fishing team. And basically, what that looks like is there's a couple kids on the team from all over the country, and then there's tournaments throughout the U.S. and like kind of national tournaments, all trout fishing with a fly rod. And then once a year, there's a World Cup in a different location around the world. So one year when we were there, we were in Poland, and the U.S. youth team is actually like one of the best in the world, or at least when we were on it, was one of the best in the world. So we won gold like 5 years in a row and competed against South Africa and Poland and Germany and Czechoslovakia and all these. So it's like at 15, I'm getting to experience these kids also my age around the world that love the same sport as me, and it's awesome. I mean, I still have buddies from South Africa that I've met in Poland, and it's just this really cool foundational relationship builder. And then that has kind of been the trampoline to the rest of my world, if you will. I can keep riffing here, but I don't want to suck the air out of the room.
You're all good. When you were a kid, it was probably like an innate passion and excitement around the outdoors. But as you've gotten older, have you found more words to put to the experience that you have for the outdoors?
Definitely when I was younger, it was just like, I guess the word would be like outside, outside, outside. You're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Now for me, it's my way to connect with myself and to connect to God for me. And it's like this really cool connective tissue between the land and me. And for me, it's like, I always tell people if I don't go roll around in the dirt once a week, like I'll go crazy. Like these concrete jungles drive me insane. And that's why Austin's so special, is because I can go 20 minutes in any direction and kind of escape, if you will. And so for me, it's more of like that reset button of now I'm an adult playing this adult world, building these businesses, doing these great things. But like I have to have that outdoor component. Otherwise, like my mind will tip and I'll go crazy. It's my balancing act.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're what I've experienced living in cities, you don't realize how much you need nature. When I go to Colorado or go to the beach, I'm like, holy smokes. It's basically like going from eating all junk food to eating clean food and realizing how good you can feel.
Totally. And then like just even it's funny, like growing up in Texas, we would go to Colorado for a couple days every summer. And like I have vivid memories being like, wow, the air here is so magnificent. Like take that big deep breath and you're like, hey, given there's Austin 20 years ago wasn't like it is now, but that heat, you're like, oh my God, that heat gets ruthless towards the end of it, especially August. And then being able to escape up there and like just have that reset outside in the mountains, you're like, it just feeds your soul. You know what I mean? It's just fantastic.
How did photography come into the picture?
I would love to be like, man, a lightning bolt hit me one day and it was like, God, you're a photographer now. But to be honest, I think if I really like look back and think like, how did this photography thing come into my life? It really came as like a natural progression of what I loved. Getting to travel through the U.S. team, and doing some kind of TV show spots through that, I learned that fishing took me to these beautiful destinations. And then I wanted to show my friends like where I was going. So I started taking photos. And then like through that kind of taking photos to share with my people back home, it got to like, I have this deal in life where it's like, if I'm bit by it, like I'm all in. Like, and it was, oh, fly fishing full throttle. And then like, I guess last year of high school, freshman year of college, it was like this photography bug just went like, yep, nope, this is your life now. And just like through that full throttle. And it was really cool because I had a bunch of sponsors from fly fishing that I was able to turn into clients, which looked like free product trade for photos for a while.
Sure.
And then like sophomore, junior year of college, we started a production company that kind of ended up being this catalyst where it's like, all right, I've got all the free stuff I could ever want now. It's like, let's start charging money and going and seeing the world and using a camera to do that, which was just, I mean, the coolest thing in the world.
I don't know a ton about fly fishing, and I've never done it. Do you
Uh-huh.
see parallels between fly fishing and photography?
Ooh, wow. Nobody's ever asked me that question. Yes, I think one of the biggest parallels is there's a giant spectrum of skill set in both, but you can enjoy it at any piece on that spectrum with both, right? It's like anybody can be a photographer and enjoy taking photos, and anybody can go fly fishing and enjoy fly fishing. What I love about it is that it is this kind of like there's an entry level to it that's really low, but you can excel and take it really, really high because when I'm like I said a second ago, it's like when I'm in, I'm all in, and I have this terrible knack where I'm like, I want to be the best. But when I'm out, like school, you give me C's and I'm happy. Like I couldn't have cared less. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because you're not the great. It's most important to get your own grade for the things you really care about. When you're sharing that about fly fishing and photography, that there's this big spectrum. The thing that I was thinking about is like there's also a lot of water and there's a lot of things you could take pictures of. So it
Mm.
almost seems a lot of the art would be knowing where to put the fly.
It's a really, really great analogy. Yeah, there's a term that we use, especially in like trout fishing in like Colorado's in the West. It's like reading water
Mhm.
and knowing where the fish lives. I think that's a great parallel between photography, right? It's like if you can read water and find where the fish live, you can catch the fish. It's like if you have that innate eye to look for a photo, it's like you can get the photo. Because there's a lot of photography out there that's all about being in the right position.
Mhm.
One of the things that we try and do now with my fine art business is like we try and create moments. We don't try and capture moments. Like we try and create these moments that tell a story that build depth that people want to be a part of and learn about, and then have on their walls for a very long time to come. There's some photos that we sell that are more captured moments. But to be really honest, it's really, really difficult to build a business around captured moments because they don't happen that often, and so it's like our job to do what we can to create these beautiful moments that then become a giant art piece on somebody's wall.
And for people that aren't familiar with yet, and we'll have links to these in the episode right up. I mean, you're talking about things like where you bring indigenous people to city skylines in Austin, Texas, or there's an epic picture of a cowboy bucking his bronco with his cowboy hat in the air in front of the Dallas skyline. Talk a little bit about the old versus new Western niche.
Totally, man. Yeah, so just to kind of go off that, it's like we've done all these crazy things with photography and characters and taking them into these, kind of not unknown spaces, but it's like the idea is to provoke thought with the images, to provoke thought for you to look and go, wow, this was here before this city was. Like, let's not forget our past to move forward, because if we don't study the past, like how can we expect to move forward with any good decision making? And learning and understanding and respecting. It's a lot about respect for me. But the smallest size we sell is 70 inches all the way up to like 100 plus inches. So these photos are dramatically big, which from a creative standpoint, it leaves no room for error, which
Mhm.
I really, really love. Uh, but going back to the indigenous people, like I've been incredibly blessed to get tapped into a couple different tribes, but more specifically, people within a tribe. One of my really good friends here in Austin is actually an Apache Native American. And in order to earn his trust, it took me like 6 months. I mean, he told me to F off white boy for 6 months, which is hilarious. Like for me, I hear that and I'm like, oh, we're going to be great friends. Like this guy's awesome. And so I spent this like 4 or 5 month period really getting to know him. And it turns out he's a medicine man for his tribe, which means he hosts these sweat lodges. And sweat lodge is basically Native American church, right? You crawl into a teepee, there's lava rocks, it's hotter than Hades, takes a couple hours, you pray, you sweat your ass off, and then you get out. And the idea is the teepee is Mother Nature's womb, and when you come back out, you're reborn into the world. And so every week they do these sweat lodges. And the first time I did one with him, I was like, I'm gonna die on this teepee floor, like for sure. This is the hottest thing I've ever felt. Feels like my eyelids and my kneecaps are on fire. Like it literally, I was like, the hair on my legs is burning off for sure. In each, there's 4 rounds in the lodges that we do with them, and in between each round, they open the door to let a little bit of air in. And the gentleman leading the lodge that night looks at me, could tell I was just miserable. He goes, Knox, your mind is weak and your heart is strong. Think with your heart, not your mind. Your mind will tell you you can quit, but your heart can take it. And then he said, we take no prisoners. If you need to leave, leave. Don't leave while somebody's praying. And then there's always a cold breath at the ground, which is kind of a cool metaphor for life. It's like sometimes you just got to slow down and get low, because the heat rises, you know? So the next 4 rounds or 3 rounds, it's just like, I'm still miserable, totally, absolutely miserable. And my face is like in the dirt and I'm eating dirt trying to get cold air. But it was this beautiful experience. And towards the end of the 4th round, I was like, well, there's no drugs involved. I was like having these beautiful visions, and singing along, completely knowing the words to this Apache chant. And I was like, this is this wild experience. And so this is after 4 months of kind of courting Sam. And then we come out of the teepee and he looks at me and he's like, all right, you're my brother. We can do this photo now, you know, which is just like, for me, I'm like, amazing. I've put all this energy and effort into it. Let's go create something really special. Because kind of tracking back to your original question, it's like, why is it important to me to have the old and the new? Like, I'm a history nerd and I love Texas history. And I think that the Native Americans that lived in the 1600s when they first took over horses to the early 1700s, when we really first started coming, were like the freest people to ever live ever. And I think that culture is so beautiful, and I want to celebrate it, and I want to be a part of it, and I want to learn as much as possible from within it, not just from the outside. So getting to do that, but then it's also like, we have a whole bunch of Western Strictly images that are kind of the ode to the past and respecting what was. And then it's also like, I can't do a disservice to the fact that I was born in the 21st century, and, you know, I can't go, I guess I could be a full-time cowboy, but it's like, I can't go be a Native American living off the land. You know what I mean? And so bringing those 2 worlds together and being honest to like the time period I'm alive in, and trying to create art that represents those worlds connecting.
Awesome. What are some projects that you're most proud of?
Man, that's one of the ones I'm most proud of. The main photo from that is titled Gray Horse, which was Sam. His name is Sam Grayhorse, the gentleman on horseback in that photo. And what was really cool is we had the horse in full war paint, and then Sam's face is in black and red war paint, like he's going to war. And the metaphor we wanted to show was, it was a bit of, hey, I'm still here, like, don't forget about us. And then also it's like, come on, we're fighting for ourselves. You know what I mean? In this city that, like, Austin used to be one of the westernmost settlements in Texas, and was kind of like this lawless land. And now it's this giant city with a bunch of tech billionaires and crazy stuff going on. And like, I just don't want us to lose sight of what makes Austin so special. And I think history is a huge part of it. And so that photo for me, and it was like the first conceived, created photo, if you will, not moment captured. And then, man, I'm really, really proud of a photo that hasn't been released yet. It'll be released in October, but we ended up closing down Circuit of the Americas in Austin and racing cowboys versus Mustangs. And we created a photo that's going to be titled American Muscle. And the idea was, I'm a big believer that America was built on horseback, meaning westward expansion happened. There was periods of time with the train and the Pacific, whatever, all connecting and all that good stuff. But it was more of like these really hard men and women rode horses, and like that connective tissue between man and horse is something that's so powerful and so ingrained. And it's one of my favorite subject matters to shoot, because it's a relationship that you can't understand unless you've had it before with a horse. It's like, what I always try and tell people is, you can really love your dog, and your dog is awesome. And there's working dogs out there, like in the military, that are tools and weapons. And that's much closer to like that relationship between man and horse, because not only is that horse your best friend, but it's your tool and your confidant to get you through, you know?
Yeah. I got a curveball for you, Knox.
Hit me.
Who's your favorite U.S. president? Because
Oh,
if it's anybody but Teddy Roosevelt, I would be extremely surprised.
man, I don't want to be cliche now that you said that, but I think he's one of the greatest men that's ever lived and of a generation that doesn't exist anymore.
Have you read much about
Um,
him?
Unbelievable. Yeah. Like he's got a book called The River of Doubt
I
that's
was
just
thinking
absolute.
about the same book.
It's mind blowing to me. There's a quote, there's a, I'm going to butcher the quote. So just I'll paraphrase here. He says, and this is in like 1905 or six. He's like, all of the great explorers are gone. I'm trying to find something. He's basically looking for that next great exploration
Mhm.
project in the world. And when I sit here and think about that in 2024, it's like, man, all of the great exploration has been done. And that was 120 years ago. It's kind of a bummer for me because I'm like, I would love to think that if I was living back then, like I would be like him, you know? Um, but that whole project, discovering that river in Brazil and all like it's
Yeah, I mean, I
like
think
half the time you're like,
he almost lost
he
his
don't.
kids in there, and they were severely under provisioned.
Oh, it's crazy. He's like, oh yeah, that map, yeah, that big giant space that nobody's been in. Let's take 150 minutes of boats and go fucking try it out. You're like,
Yeah,
and we'll be back in 3 years. Like, holy smokes!
yeah, that's the new frontier. You
No, but
mentioned,
he's definitely by far number one president.
I would imagine so. I mean, you guys would be like two peas in a pod. How do you, go about keeping things new with these projects? You mentioned like some really
Mm,
cool stuff, like the war paint horse in front of the city, and then I mean the Circuit of America's project sounds awesome. But what is that process for you to keep finding new exciting things?
man, the cool thing is we're so new in this endeavor of creating fine art and like trying to methodically create art with my photography. Uh, I'm so excited about so many things. It's like the drugs are still very, very much in the bloodstream. Like they haven't run out. So we're like, it's like, oh man, it's my favorite thing. Like I love it so much. Um, and we're idea rich and
Mhm.
execution poor just because I'm having to go through and like really execute on the ideas that mean the most at this time. Because it's like, it's so expensive to get them done.
Yep.
Like it's not like, oh, let's go spend a couple $100 to get this photo. It's like tens of thousands, if not more sometimes, trying to figure out how to create and capture these photos. And for me, it's the funnest risk I've taken because it's me getting to put my true creative expression into the world.
How do you, from like a business standpoint, the term they would use, like how do you underwrite a particular project and figure out if it's worth doing or not? Oh
Just
yeah,
like
of
just
course.
yeah, put the man like there's I would like to think I'm a decently business savvy. Um, but I throw business tactics out the wind if I've got the gut feeling that it's going to work. It's not like if I think I can get the photo and I think I can sell it, I will go all the way. Like I will swing the bat, and it's cool because we have a marketing business, and then I help with another company here in town on a consulting kind of standpoint. So I'm incredibly blessed that my risk is mitigated.
Mhm.
I can go spend this money, time and effort, energy to create that photo, and I'm not going to starve to death. So I have that ability to swing the bat more than most, which is can't be understated. Um, and I think it's such an important part of why the art is exciting to me because we price them high and we keep them really limited for on purpose. Like I want people to own the art and appreciate it, and I want it to be expensive enough, or not even expensive is the wrong word here. I want it to cost enough money to where they appreciate spending and have to think through purchasing it, even if you have $1 billion. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I want this art to mean something because it means so much for me to create it.
Yeah. Do you have you mentioned being idea rich? Do you have a dream project? And if you can't share it, I get it.
Oh man, I have so many dream projects. There's a really big project that we're working on right now that I think is going to take a really, really long time. And the idea is I want to take all these iconic landscapes that people have seen before, and maybe I don't know. I'm just going to share it. If another photographer is listening and you steal this idea from me, good on you, I guess. It's just capitalism. You're going to spend more money than I am faster. But the idea is I really want to take these iconic landscapes that everybody's seen before and create scenes in front of them that happened 200 to 10,000 years ago to really provoke the thought of, hey, respect this land and like what this was. So we did a big shoot in Aspen this year in front of the goal was to be the first people to bring horses to Maroon Bells in the wintertime. And the 80 years that the gentleman whose family owns the ranch has been living on the ranch. He was like,
Wow.
nobody's ever done it. And I had probably 250 hours into planning this thing. We get everybody there, which was an absolute freaking nightmare. We had 3 snowcats rented. We had a cowboy that was going to ride the horses in at 1:30 in the morning, 7 miles, and yada, 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 crazy, crazy, crazy. And then it snows 20 inches the night we get there. And there's 12 different slide paths on the route up. So they're like, no freaking way. It's too avalanche dangerous. And so we ended up audibling kind of last minute. And in the 4 days that we were there, we got 15 minutes of light with the second, I guess skyline's the wrong word, but landscape that we were trying to shoot in front of, which is a mountain called Mount Sopris. And so we had a Navajo chief and then an old cowboy trapper, and we got some scenes with them, and we had a 15-minute period, and it's like, well, it just stars aligned, and we got it, man. It was so awesome, and it was such a chaotic photo shoot, and it was literally like it was scripted. 4 days, chaos, no light, can't do anything other than get some portraits, which were neat, but it was like couldn't do what we came there to do. And we had 15 minutes in the last hour and a half of the last day that we were there. It felt like somebody was like, oh yeah, here's a TV show. We're just gonna, write the script and this is how it's gonna go.
What do you, a Navajo Indian, and a cowboy do with 3 days of downtime snowed in Aspen?
Oh man, that's a great question. Get to know each other a lot.
Yeah.
And that's for me, that's one of the needles in my veins, the drugs, if you will, that's so addicting is getting to spend time with these people that live a lifestyle that you and I never get to experience on a
Mhm.
day-to-day basis. And then that's my favorite part is getting to bring their life, their story, their honesty, their authenticity to the world on a small scale and getting to share that love and appreciation because to be a full-time cowboy, it's like if you broke it down into how much money these guys are making hourly, like they're making pennies.
Yeah.
You have to do it because you love it. And then to have all of the garb and heritage and correct appropriate headdresses and mock, deer skinned outfits and all like you have to love your past. And it's such a cool thing to get to be a part of and learn from. And like I said, I'm already addicted to learning about it from books and videos and all kinds of other stuff. Getting that firsthand face-to-face account is like I could have spent 2 weeks with them. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Just sitting there listening.
You mentioned there's always cool air near the ground as a good indigenous lesson. Do you have other favorite indigenous or Western
Ooh,
sayings?
yes, but I don't. Let's think about this. I don't know if I can hit you with some off the cuff right now. I'll think about it as we continue,
Yeah,
and if I
think
hit one
about
in
it.
my head, yeah, because
Yeah,
that's a great question. Because these guys have so many. Like you're just like sitting there and you're like, wait, what? What did you say? You're like, that might be the best shit I ever heard.
for
But
sure.
I gotta look.
Yeah, I
I gotta start
remember
writing these
when I
down.
first started working, I worked with some guys out of Birmingham, Alabama, and they had all sorts of sayings that I had never heard,
Yeah.
like being from Columbus, Ohio. And one of them was chasing ants in the attic while the elephants are running out the front door. And chasing ants in the attic while the elephants are running out the front door. So like losing sight of the big picture.
Amen. But dude, what a wild way of saying it. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a good question.
Yeah.
Damn, you're good at this, man. You're really good at this.
Thank you. You mentioned the Aspen project at Maroon Bells.
Mm,
Like, what goes into like? Could you break it down a little bit more? Like how do you
totally.
get the tribes and the cities? Like, what goes into creating the scenes in your words?
So I'll just kind of go play by play here. It starts with the idea, right? Like, yeah, I have to have an idea, and then what I'll do. And what's crazy is I write none of it out, and I have the worst memory.
Hmm,
But when I love
pretty good.
something, I tend to remember
Pretty
it.
good combo.
Yeah, it's a terrible combo, bro. It's awful. But I'll find the pieces. Like the idea came, it was like, how cool would it be if we took some characters and put them in front of moon bells? And then it's like, okay, cool. I know how to get to the bells. How do we find the pieces? Like, who are the people? And it's like, I did this shoot exactly the one I'm going to be doing this weekend in South Dakota, and I had a cowboy there that I met that he and I have been chatting all year trying to plan something, and now I was like, oh, this is the perfect piece of the puzzle. Got my cowboy, called him. He's super excited. He's actually so we're doing this shoot this weekend in South Dakota called the Artist Ride. It's been going on for 40 years. It's where these Western artists, painters, sculptors, and all kinds of stuff come, and they're able to model and place these different cowboys and native people in different locations around this ranch in order to get inspiration for their paintings. And I got connected to the guy who runs it, and he's never let a true photographer come in until last year. I was the first photographer that he let come in there. Ultimately, because we're doing hopefully more with our photography than just photography. It's becoming art and
Mhm.
telling a story. And he and I aligned on that way. But Jake, my cowboy, he ended up connecting me to this guy, Thomas White Eagle, who is a Navajo, has been in some movies, has was a teacher for 20 years, and then in his elder life somehow got tapped into this movie realm, acting world, and that's kind of what he does for a living now. Is like small, different movie scenes where he can go act and portray these his people
Mhm.
uh, in the correct light. Because there's a lot of movies that we see that you and I would have no idea is like incorrect. You know,
Sure.
and getting to sit with these guys and learn, they're like, oh, that's wrong. The headdress is wrong. The colors are wrong. The flower, the blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, whoa, I would never have known that. But it makes total sense. And so having that kind of inside man, if you will, is so important for me in the authenticity of what we're trying to create, and having somebody that knows, hey, this is the tribes that were here. This is the what they would have worn. This is the headdress that they would have worn. This is the spear that they would have had in their hand. Like this is the like all the way down to the shoes, like what's inside the shoes. It's like these tiny little
Mm.
details that are so important. Um, because it goes back to Sam in the first photo we created in Austin and him telling me to F off white boy. You know, it's like there is this kind of like I guess white colonizer privilege, if you
Sure.
will, with creating art around indigenous people. And it's like it's by no means do I want to like step on their backs and then cheer at the top. You know, it's like I want it's like high tides raise all ships. Like I want everybody to be I want it to be a part of a team. And like what's really fun for me is a lot of these guys have done whether it's TV shoots or photo shoots or artist shoots with other artists. It's like they've all done these scenarios because there's very very few people left on the planet that look like the characters that I'm using.
Sure.
Um, and characters is the wrong word. The people that I'm getting to work with, right? It's a total communal deal. And then my favorite thing is bringing them into the fold, right? Bringing them into the idea. Hey, I've got this grand vision. This is what I want it to look like. Help me with all the little details to make sure that we create the most true and authentic thing that you can be proud of, I can be proud of, and we all can collectively be proud of. That way, when the collector sees it and buys it, it's as real as it can possibly be. And that's where when you say checklist of like getting these pieces done, like that's what's important to me is like, hey, I've created the photo, here it is edited. We sign off on it before this thing is released to the public and shown to any collectors because I don't want anything out there that's BS and unauthentic to you. And you are so important part of this piece of the puzzle. It's like let's collectively do this. And then making sure they get paid and taken care of and like are a part of the upside with me is also super important because I don't want this. It's again, it's high tides raise all ships.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you're talking about the alignment you do even in your financial structuring to make sure everyone's participating.
Mm.
That's super cool. How do you go about like, you're making these big bets on these projects, which is really inspiring. I mean, you're a lifelong pursuit of passion.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about building a brand and creating awareness and then also creating a customer experience that'll be memorable?
Totally, man. I think there's so for about a year and a half, I studied, I guess, what you would call the art world, specifically within photography. And there's a couple people that have done it very successfully before me, and I've studied their business models and tried to see. And kind of the business model is really large scale, limited edition, black and white photography.
And are these guys you were studying, are these guys also in the same niche, or were they kind of
A couple of them.
okay?
It's all across the board. There's some wildlife, there's some Western, and then there's just some real human photographers. There's this guy Sebastião Salgado, this Brazilian guy. He's probably my all-time favorite photographer. He's more capture a moment than create a moment.
Mhm.
But the moments that he's been able to capture over the last 50 years are just unfreaking believable that they're real. Like you look at them and you're just like, whoa. But that's 50 years of work, right? It's like I have to somehow figure out how to create this as fast as possible. I think there's three reasons people buy art. I think the first is it's visually intoxicating. You know, the reason you have that art behind you on the walls is you enjoy looking at it. I think the second is the brand of the artist. You know, people are paying $100 million for a piece of art because of who the artist was or is still. And then the third is the story. What connects with the heart tissue, the heart of the collector. And so for me, building my brand, the way that we're thinking about it and the way that I'm doing it is 1 and 3 are the most important. How do we create stuff that's visually appealing and visually intoxicating, so much so that they want to spend, you know, thousands of dollars to buy it? And then the third is the story element. And so since I have this production background, I've got all these amazing guys that are incredibly talented at video and production around the country. And so we have a video element to each piece that tells you who, what, when, where, why, and how we created it. Because the biggest question that we get is, oh, that's so cool. Did AI create that? Or did Photoshop create that? And it's like, no, we went through hell and back to create this MFer. Like, here's a 5-minute documentary that you can now watch and be a part of. And then in turn, that's also my biggest marketing scheme, because it's like, hey, every one of my collectors is my sales force, because they're like, they have friends that are in the same atmosphere as them that can afford what they're doing, that have the wall space to buy what I create. And then when people buy art, they want to be able to talk about it. You know, it's like you want to give them that channel to talk about. And it's my job as an artist. Like if I'm truly putting my heart on the wall, which I am, like I want to sell it. Like I want people to understand why I created it. I think sell has a bad connotation. It's not necessarily sell. It's more of like, I want the true reason to come out. And then you get to take why I created it and make your own reason. You could throw mine out the effing door. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to know why I spent blood, sweat, and tears to create them, and lots of cash.
Yeah. Lots of cash go into these.
Yeah.
You talk about the story a lot. So I want to ask it a question in a kind of abstract sense. Like we're talking about creating these scenes of cultures colliding and honoring the past and tradition.
Yep.
Is there, in your mind, an understory even beneath that as to why these stories are so important for you to share?
I would say yes. So right now there's 3 series that I have open to the public. The first one is A Showdown with Time. A Showdown with Time is all about understanding our past to go forward, right? It's on a large scale to be screaming, hey, look where we've been, learn from the past. Now let's make a collective, educated decision, move forward. Mm-hmm. The second one is called Echoes of the West, which is all about authenticity. Like you and I have an iPhone in our pocket and it's got the totality of human knowledge in it. And yet there's still people that every day work cows on horseback and live on horses. And so it's all about celebrating these people that haven't changed for 200 years. And then even beyond that too, the native cultures that are still celebrating their past and being authentic and true to who they are and who they were. Really, it's who they are and who they are still becoming, right? And then the third is called, why can't I think of it right now? It's called, Symphony of Survival, right? And so it's all about wildlife. And so the way that the kind of the underlying theme of everything is, in order to be the best version of ourselves, we have to study the past, make educated decisions moving forward. We have to be authentic and true to who we are. And then for this whole thing we call life to work, we all have to be willing to work together and put bullshit aside. You know, it's like there has to be that communal aspect and there can't be this polarizing craziness. It's like, so that's kind of the underlying theme of everything is like work together, make educated decisions, and be true to who you are.
Awesome, man. I really like that. And I appreciate you sharing that. What's been the hardest thing for you personally in finding your purpose through pursuit of your passions?
Opening the next door and jumping fully in. there's been a lot of times where I can see it before I was brave enough to take the step, if that makes sense. I would think now is a fairly interesting, like I've got a lot of stuff going on, and it's like, what's that door? Like I try and base my decisions, and again, this comes from a position of freedom and mitigated risk, is like I try and base the majority of my decisions off of what fulfills me and makes me the most happy. Because at 26, my purpose in life that I've identified is to inspire passion in the masses. And the only way I can inspire passion in the masses if I chase my passion to the ends of the earth and I'm true to what makes me happy. Um, so I would say that the hardest, scariest thing has been seeing the door and jumping, and like really just like running through it, even if it's not open.
Are there any doors that you see open that are next for you?
Oh, yes, but I don't know if I can talk about them yet.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I
Are
think so.
are there upcoming projects that you have that you can talk about?
Yeah, man, we're doing a really exciting project. The wildlife stuff, I think there's a ton of species of wildlife in the world that is incredibly beautiful and exciting to look at. I think there's very few animals that people will purchase images of. One of those animals being the grizzly bear that people just freak out about. And so we're doing a big shoot in Alaska this August where we're going to chase grizzly bears and get stupid close to them. And I just bought a new camera that doubles the quality essentially of what I'm capable of creating, which isn't like, it's, if you think about it
I
on a
mean,
scale
that's
of,
insane. I mean, you're already printing that big and it's going to be double the quality.
it's
How many people have a camera like this? Like,
I don't
is
know.
it thousands? Is it hundreds?
I would bet it's hundreds. Yeah. I mean, what it's capable of is insane. And unless you're shooting billboard size ads, there's no purpose in owning it,
Hmm.
because it's ridiculously expensive. Um, so I'm crazy excited about taking that up there and getting to create with that, because there's something, the details are what matters in these images. Um, and having them perfectly sharp. Like even now, the camera that we shoot on, its capabilities are unbelievable and unmatched to what it was a decade ago, even 5 years ago. And this camera just like stomps. Dude, it's gonna be amazing. And so creating with these bears, I'm so excited. And again, we have a behind the scenes element to everything, right? So it's like, hey, like we did a shoot in Yellowstone where I was 6 yards from this bison, and it's looking, the photo is just awesome. It's looking directly at the camera, and you can just see its eyes, and its face is frozen. And it's like you look at that photo, and especially with animals, the eyes are the window to the soul. And there's something so important about photographing animals. You can't shoot down on them, because it's like, it looks like the human experience, right? It looks like you're like in a zoo looking down on an animal. The really important thing is being at eye level or below, so it feels to the viewer, especially when they're giant, like you're a part of the scene, like you're almost something else, like you're another creature that it's looking at. Um, and then getting the eyes, man, that's number one. Always trying to focus on those eyes.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that most life forms have eyes to be able to view the world through.
Yeah. What a cool thought. I've never even thought about that. Yeah, it's so true.
I really appreciate you sharing your passion with us today. Before I let you go, what's the best way for people to keep up on the work you're doing?
Man, social media is probably going to be the best for now. The website, if you go ahead and sign up and throw your email in there, there'll be some stuff coming out soon that'll be really exciting. We've got over the next 8 months, there'll be a lot of shoots that we've done over the last 8 months that are kind of going to be released into the world that are just freaking awesome. Blood, sweat, tears, effort, energy. The most amazing team and support ever has gone into it. It's funny because I always get asked, why do I say we when I talk about our business? It's because it's not me. It's this team, man. It's a different team every time, but there's key players, and everybody that we're creating photos with, I hope we can be proud of them. It's just awesome. It's so much fun. So social media and website would be awesome.
Cool. We'll have links to both those, and that comment really resonates. I mean, you're asking people to do pretty crazy stuff, like, hey, let's go out toe to toe with grizzly bears. They wouldn't be able to do it if they didn't love it too.
Right. Yeah. It's so important, man. Having people that are behind the vision, right? It's like any business. You got to have people that are on the bus.
Yeah.
And we are lucky to have a lot of people on the bus.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure to have links to both your Instagram and your website in the show notes, but appreciate you coming on the show.
Dude, thank you so much, Adam. You're the man.
You're the
Appreciate you.
man. Thanks, Knox. Yeah, I thought it was super fun, man. I just love that you're chasing your passion and have a real commitment to craftsmanship.
Oh, I appreciate it, bro.
So,
I mean, seriously. And honestly, like, great job, bro. Like,
thanks,
to
man.
you as well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I love I mean, asking questions and new insights. I mean, for me, insights are like I get most excited about unlocking something new.
Right.
So like to hear you share the connecting the themes, like I think photography, like any art, is a medium to offer a transcendent experience that re-inspires people to live their life fully.
Dude, what a freaking write that down. That's beautiful.
Thanks, man. And I think a lot of not just art has a chance. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. I think anybody serving anybody anything has the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I'll give you credit in my notes.
Yeah, please, man. Please do. Thank you for listening to Tuesdays Morrissey. That conversation was with Knox Kronenberg. Knox is a fine art photographer based in Austin, Texas, that focuses on capturing the essence of the old world meeting the new, as well as the unique beauty of Western life. What I enjoyed about the episode was just how clear and focused Knox is at pursuing his passions and sharing that with the world. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend, and we'll see you here soon. Thanks.